One.
Welcome back to another Boxscore Geek show. Wow, regularity, Brian. The regular season coming up. We need our reps. I'm your host, Ray Alvarez, found most places as Nerd Numbers, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Voice of God, Man of Many Hats, Brian. I'm doing something wild here. Just for verification, I have Twitch on to make sure everything is going okay. I can see you. Normally, I can't. I peek behind the
Oh,
curtain. Normally, because of how Brian records it, we record all moving parts, all complicated, fancy. I see a black box for Brian. I'm actually seeing your face. This is wild, Brian. I'm probably going to turn it off because I've definitely had the infinite echo if you're not careful, if you have Twitch up while you're actually
gotta
twitching.
be careful.
Yep. All right. Well, you excited coming into the NBA season? No Gary Payton the second, but who did you pick up? I think we've had this discussion.
Oh,
The
lots of
Warriors.
Warriors news. Yeah, but we're here on the evening of September 20th, Tuesday, which means 7 days until training camp starts, 10 days until preseason. And you know me, I'm one of those sickos. I watch Summer League, I watch training camp reports, I watch preseason, so I'm hyped.
I do none of that, and here's what's mean. I don't really watch or follow, so again, I'm not even going to feel bad to be kind of out of the loop. What happens is once the season gets going, we will have numbers on the box score Geeks. That was really annoying this summer, how it broke down, but we got it fixed. Numbers will be going. I'm actually hoping to, I've said this every year, Brian, but the global pandemic put a big old monkey wrench into a lot of stuff. But actually hoping to at least do a little development or at least a little number tweaking or some stuff this year. So, once the season's going, I'm watching box scores regularly. I don't know if I'll have the time for it, but I really did enjoy the top 10 box scores of the week back in the day. And when you do that, right, you're watching every day, which is a lot of fun. But in the off season, I'm not paying attention. So, barring the big news, you could tell me for the second tier players that we know are super important, there are a number of those that could have moved and I wouldn't have known. But I do know for a fact that after losing Gary Payton, and we broke it, I think either myself and Ben Guest or me and you, in discussing the Warriors. The Warriors made a really good pickup this offseason that, I don't know if it'll compensate for Gary Payton the second because he's amazing, but I'm still mad because he was a good pickup.
Yeah, the Warriors are trying as hard as they can just to run it back as close as they can to last season. So, yeah, some players did price themselves out, and famously Gary Payton, we talked about that ad nauseum. But they got Dante DiVincenzo, who's been a really, really good player.
Yes, that was
healthy.
The one that I was just like, oh,
yeah.
Okay.
So if he's healthy, he could be a great, defensive guard. The other big one is they lost both Otto Porter, who was, in the rotation even up into the finals, like one of their top 6 or 7 players. He's gone. He went to Toronto for bigger money. But they got JaMychal Green, who's a very similar player, right? Very intelligent.
That's my guy
rebounds.
from the Nuggets, and he was, he's been up and down. But what I will say is the Warriors are starting to remind me a lot of, say, Boston. Actually, they're reminding me of Boston in more ways than one, in that a lot of times players that go to the Warriors look better. It just keeps happening, and it's not hard to misunderstand why. There was this myth with players like Kobe, that you give Kobe the ball and Kobe is going to draw the defense. The idea is Kobe has to take a lot of shots to fake the defense out, and he's going to make easier shots for his teammates. Now, an easy point you can make is, well, if Kobe takes all of these bad shots, regardless of if his teammates get better shots, that possession's eaten. It's really hard to make up that possession.
With the one asterisk, the Kobe assist article that his misses were actually good. That's an article we argued against back in the old days by Kurt Goldsberry.
It is painful because the take on that is some missed shots turn into rebounds. Rebounds are good, so could missed shots be good? And I've heard that logic. The funny reality is you look at the players that had a lot of Kobe assists. This is, I think, would be Dwight Howard and Pau Gasol back in the day when that article was written. But then, and then again, Dwight Howard later, and then Anthony Davis. Not Anthony Davis, that's with LeBron James. But, and Shaq earlier in his career. And these players hopped around a lot of teams. We've seen in the statistics, rebounds are among the most consistent stat year to year. So it's funny when someone's trying to say, well, Kobe gives these players rebounds, and you go, well, they get rebound. They were getting rebounds on crappy teams with players not like Kobe. But if we get to the Warriors with players like Steph Curry, yes, like Klay Thompson when he's healthy, it's not hard to believe that they actually make life easier for your teammates, because it is the case where you cannot leave Steph Curry open, and Steph Curry's assist numbers and defense numbers look really well. So I could buy, getting better when you go to the Warriors. Now, like I said, it's our second topic, which is Rob Williams III, the Time Lord. The other thing the Warriors have in common with the Celtics, now the comment I'm making is the Celtics and the Warriors players go there and tend to look better, is they both tend to burn players out in the finals, and these players get injured and don't come back. So that's Warriors talk. Anything else you want to add before we hop onto our classic wheelhouse of ownership, money, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, just that these are good moves, and the Warriors have kind of gotten back to form the last few years with their role players. And what I mean by that is there's some roles in the NBA that there's only a very limited number of people that can do it right. You can only have one person with the ball at once, one lead guard. There's not enough space really around the rim to have a lot of rim protectors. So there is some truth to, we need a million wings, and you just can't have enough guys that can defend and shoot threes. And all the Warriors role players that they brought in can do that. You have Steph Curry, you don't need him to create their own shot.
Yeah, and then also what I'll say, the one capper I'll give in the Warriors this season is Klay Thompson is an albatross. And you can have a player like Andrew Wiggins, who talked ad nauseum about players like this. Now, again, I argue Andrew Wiggins, you were lucky to get him at the performance he is now. Anybody that thinks Andrew Wiggins 3 years into a stint with the Warriors is anything like Andrew Wiggins was like on the Minnesota Timberwolves is lying to themselves. He is still massively overpaid, and that's a problem because you're losing players like Gary Payton, and potentially in the future, you said like Kevon Looney might be on the block too. But a player like Andrew Wiggins is overpaid. You can handle that. Klay Thompson has been god awful. Now, the funny thing is, in the playoffs last year, because he was injured most of the regular season and only came back for, I think, the very, very end of the playoffs. Did he play any of the regular season, or was it just the playoffs he was back for?
No, I can't remember, but yeah, he was really up and down. He had some good games, some brutal games, not consistent.
But that was the thing, is like what was really funny from a variance perspective is Klay Thompson would have like an amazing game, like a bad game, a horrible game, a mediocre game. And like on the whole, you're just like, oh, this is terrible, right? Never mind. He played like 32 games in the season last year, so he got a lot of games in. But what I'll say about Klay Thompson is,
it's all a blur.
Okay, if you get a good game like 1-4, and I believe there was one finals game where he just played super duper well and like made up for it, and the team can get around in the other games, that's fine. For a full season, that's going to be a problem. And then it's also, the rough part is he's getting older, right? Klay Thompson he's going to be 32 this season. Yeah, he's already 32. So he'll turn 33 this season. So Klay Thompson is getting up there in age, getting really beat up. We've said this about athletes forever. It is remarkable the faith people have in athletes coming back from injury. Every injury gets progressively worse, especially with age. I'm a Nuggets fan, and people are trying to get me hyped about, Jamal Murray coming back. And
he's a little bit younger, but still.
But what I'll say here is the Nuggets had Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr., and Nikola Jokic. And that was potentially like that is, in my opinion, tell me if I'm wrong, the greatest what if core now ever. Now, I can give kind of a longevity argument, but that's kind of like the irony where it gets even more merit. Meaning, if you look at, say, T-Mac and Yao, or let's say Grant Hill and actually, what was it? T-Mac as well? Was he on the
and maybe Tim Duncan you could throw in there?
But I'm saying Tim Duncan wasn't on it. So I'm saying if you look at an actual squad where the players were together, but then just injury, like, Grant Hill was never healthy. Greg Oden and Brandon Roy is one of my favorites. If you look at these cases where there's this amazing corner, like, oh my goodness, they are healthy, this is going to be amazing. And then they just don't. I think Nikola Jokic, Jamal Murray, and Michael Porter Jr. is top of the list. Michael Porter Jr. and Jamal Murray are coming back, and I'm like, I'm sorry, but two players that missed an entire season due to an injury, the belief that they are both going to come back and both be healthy is ludicrous. And I mean, like, the Nets are a great example. If you look at Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, they both, both of them didn't last. Like, Kevin Durant looked great, but not like his former self. And Kyrie Irving has not looked great, including, having to miss so many games because he's not vaccinated. So it's like anytime there's injury and people are like, oh, they'll be back, it's like they might. It happens. It certainly does. Tim Duncan's an example of a player that missed a lot of time and came back. But as you start compounding, as we got more and more players, it just gets harder and harder to believe. So
With that in
Klay
mind,
Thompson, I'm really nervous about Klay Thompson.
Yeah, here's the thing. I think he's fine. He played okay in the finals on defense. His shot is inconsistent. I don't think he hurts them being out there. The problem is just he's overpaid. But, we'll see. I think the biggest
okay.
I was just going to say the biggest problem the Warriors have is they have no depth at center. And if there's any injuries there at all, they could have some issues.
And I mean, Kevon Looney and Draymond Green, those are your two big ones. And
Draymond just can't play center that much. He's too small. He can play it for a little bit, but he gets physically broken down by bigger players.
That's the theory I think you've had, right? Is that as he's gotten more and more beat up, it does seem like playing center has just been what's happened to him.
So, I mean, Looney famously was an Iron Man last year and played every game and played very well in the playoffs. And that was maybe the number one key for the Warriors elevating themselves above kind of what the pundits expected, myself included, at the beginning of the season. But not too long before that, it's like, does he have permanent nerve damage? Is his career over? Like, he was looking in bad shape. I mean, maybe he's through that. I don't know. But I would want a little bit more. And the only other player they have is James Wiseman. And again, great 7-footer, athletic. If he
player that's missed a full season with injury.
He's never really played basketball regularly. He's just so young and has had injuries. So, I mean, it worked out this gamut last year for the Warriors, but the 2 years before that, it did not work out, and they had no depth in the front court. So, I think what they're going to do is try to watch the buyout market or the trade market and try to add a veteran at some point. But and there are some players out there, but still,
they are the luckiest team in modern NBA history. Between Iguodala, Kevin Durant, and Gary Payton. So it's like I want to go like, there's no way that a player is going to fall in their lap. But that's another thing is really good teams. The Lakers of old used to be this. Are the teams where good players want to play for them and will take a discount and come on over. So could still happen.
It's just greedy. Right. There's a lot of centers out there that are still playing well, including Dwight Howard himself, who's not bad anymore. Or still, I should say. Anyway.
What do you think? This one, sorry. Warriors are just too much fun to talk about, and we're going to go dark in a second. So dark isn't bad topic, not like off the air. What do you think about picking up Kevin Love? That was my theory, if you recall. So, like, what if, like, James Wiseman, Andrew Wiggins for salary dump for Kevin Love off the Cleveland and maybe some picks or something?
Oh, they wouldn't do it. The Warriors.
I think the Warriors should somehow try and get, because Kevin Love's is on his last year, so it's also possible that Cleveland could cut him with something if he was willing to leave money on the table to hit waiver wires. They could some savviness, they could maybe trade him over. I think the Warriors should pick up Kevin Love.
The mode that Cleveland's in right now is we're trying to win a title, right? They spent all this on Donovan Mitchell. Now, that could easily blow up. We're a little more skeptical, of the deal than most people. But, it remains to be seen.
I'm trying to look at, like, good people to target. Zubats would be interesting off of, like, the Clippers.
Hassan Whiteside's available.
Drummond.
My favorite.
What's it called? The one that pains. I don't think we've talked about this on air, but it does definitely pain me that this happened. But Sam Hinkie picked up Montrezl Harrell on the 76ers.
Yep.
So that's a bummer that he's off the market, but he's a good one. Although I'm not sure he's what the Warriors need because he's undersized and kind of like would be not redundant in skill set, but redundant in the issues, right? With Draymond Green of being a very talented big that's kind of undersized. You don't necessarily want that.
It's just so greedy to have all these roster slots on 6'6" wing prospects, or like the Warriors have second round picks and various people. It's like, just bring in a veteran big. You need to have some body. Anyway, that's my rant.
Hassan Whiteside probably would be the best bet to go for, I think, because everybody just underrates him. But I don't know. All right, that's I don't have a subtle segue to Robert Sarver, but all right. Sad day is that this is a rerun. We kind of make jokes. I made a joke when I tweeted out about a story about the Phoenix Suns with DeAndre Ayton a few months ago now at Boxscore Geeks, about how their handling of the DeAndre Ayton contract was a rerun of how the Minnesota Timberwolves handled Kevin Love. And now we get to basically say the NBA's handling of Robert Sarver is a rerun almost of Donald Sterling. So Robert Sarver is one of the worst owners in the NBA. And this is always frustrating whenever any big name celebrity or billionaire kind of gets, and funny news, he is not officially a billionaire if you exclude the Phoenix Suns. So he is worth about 800 million, but of course he's the majority owner of the Suns, and the Suns are likely worth $3 to $5 billion at this point with standard NBA range. So billionaire owner of the Suns, that it's just a well-known thing that he's a horrible person, horrible owner, etc. And then has said a lot of terrible, horrible things that have come to light. And the NBA's response to this is to suspend him for a year. And I've heard everybody say this, and I'll actually be curious, Brian, if you've read more than me, if you know what that means, because what the hell does it mean to suspend an owner in the NBA and fine him $10 million?
Yeah, it's hilarious. Well, so first of all, there's a report that, I don't know, someone in the front office was like, oh yeah, we're going to be in touch with him all during the ban. He's just admitting they're going to violate the ban, right? It's just, I'm sure they walked it back since then, but no, I mean, it's, well, so the fact that they are kind of similar situations, yet the NBA is reacting different to them, it's kind of leads people to speculate a lot, right? What are the differences here? Because if you look at like all the stuff that Sarver has allegedly done, it seems a lot worse than Sterling, right? Just the breadth of it, the number of things over the length of time versus a wider swath of people, right? In fact, employees that are lower down in the organization, I mean, I'm not saying Sterling was justified in his comments about Magic Johnson at all, but at least Magic Johnson is like really powerful and can stand up for himself.
I mean, I think for those that know, so here's what happened. Donald Sterling was recorded saying a bunch of horrible
I want to
things.
Get to that next.
The tape got leaked, and then as a result, this was in the middle of the playoffs. A lot of the players were upset, maybe threatening to boycott. And then kind of Adam Silver stepped up and kind of pressured, and Donald Sterling sold the team to Steve Ballmer for $2 billion at the time, the most an NBA franchise had ever sold.
Well, I think his wife actually did it. Sterling himself was like,
oh, interesting. Okay, that makes
his wife was involved.
Also, am I mistaken? They were going through a divorce at the time too.
That's very possible.
I don't know.
That's
but
very
basically,
possible.
Yeah, there was some asset splitting amongst the couple there in that case. So that's what happened with Sterling. And then with Robert Sarver, there was a huge investigation to, misconducts, wrongdoing, sexism, racism, saying lots of bad things.
Over years and years.
And the frustrating part, and this is the media cycle, and we're actually going to talk media cycle when we get to chess, ironically enough. What's really annoying about the media cycle is a soundbite, right? A video clip, a soundbite of someone saying something terrible does so much more in public perception than I'm reading this, it's like 8,000 documents, or 8 or 80,000, one of the two, on the article I was just skimming briefly on this just to get a recap. Like, we have this giant report, remember with Trump, like the Mueller report. It's like the Mueller report was arguably less effective than like the Access Hollywood tape, even though one was significantly worse. And it's just, how public perception plays out.
Yeah, and that's, I think, the argument that I buy is those two things, right? Number one, the tape, there's no tape that's playing all over the place. You would have to have read all these detailed information about the report, which I haven't done personally, but yeah, what you're saying is right. And then you also have to wonder, somehow Sterling was less popular with the owners than Sarver. Maybe there's something political in the background. That's tough to say too, because Sterling was very disliked.
Sterling was, what's funny is, in some ways, Sterling was a smart owner in the, I don't want to spend enough money and I want to maximize money. We kind of talk this weirdness, right, if you compare the NBA with a normal business. So as an example, One of the things that Donald Sterling did that the NBA got upset and fined him for was Sterling. The Clippers used to be in Buffalo, and then San Diego. So it was Buffalo to San Diego, right? So Buffalo, San Diego. I think he bought them when they were in San Diego. Him and Bus bought like around the same time.
Yep.
He moved the team from San Diego to Los Angeles, and the league was like, "What are you doing? You can't just move a franchise." And they fined him. Having two teams in Los Angeles makes a hell of a lot more sense than having a team in a smaller market in California. In fact, we've made this argument, and this is really out of date. I need to go back and do this one of these days with all the excess spare time. But at one point when Arturo and Devin back in the day were looking over like best markets for a team and where teams shouldn't be. So for instance, Milwaukee and Denver, my two home teams, neither market should have an NBA team according to the data. But when you look at the data, what it really says is you should put like if you had 8 teams to place right now in the NBA.
Chicago.
Okay, so that would be the 3, right? It would go in order. So it's funny because Chicago's there, but in order it would go. You would want like 4 teams in New York, 3 teams in Los Angeles, so not California, Los Angeles, right? Because that's the most densely populated area.
Is that 4 total teams? So Knicks, Nets plus 2 more.
Ooh, interesting.
Or is they saying 6 teams? Which one? I'm curious.
Mean, think about European football, right? Where you have a bunch of teams just in the
London has all these Premier League teams, right?
So yeah, I mean, okay, let's make it easy. Let's go 4 teams, right? So you would do like 5 teams. You'd do like 2, 3. Sorry, Brian, we're almost done. If I edit this, I'm going to edit this down to just the last part. If you had 6 teams, you would put 3 in New York, new teams. You would put 3 new teams in New York, 2 new teams in Los Angeles, 1 new team in Chicago. So Sterling arguably did a good move, putting another team in Los Angeles. Now, the mistake is he ran it horribly and then was a terrible person. So I think the owners were not happy because this is a person that is legitimately just using the NBA to make money for himself without helping the league. And I could see them not liking that. Sarver, and the best take, JP, so interestingly, JP, fantastic follow on Twitter if you don't. The take he's really popular for right now is that the $20 haircut is dead. So just like give up on that, which and it's getting a a which is hilarious. But he was talking about
there's still coupons out there, Dre, if you want to go to some barbers.
Great Clips is still in there, right? All right.
There we go.
But Sarver was saying the owners relate to Sarver and they don't want Sarver penalized because it could mean they could be too.
Yeah.
And a similar thing was true about Sterling. I mean, the owners weren't super duper gung ho. It kind of flipped. And what has happened with Sarver, for those that don't know, is one of the co-owners of the Suns has come out and said that he should step down, and now it's turning political. So it's like, that's what's worth knowing is that do not believe for a second that the group of billionaires, that they associate more with you than with each other.
Yep.
And when you start wondering to yourself, oh, well, that billionaire did a bad thing. Those other ones, they don't have anything to worry about. It's like, it's really hard to accumulate $1 billion of wealth without exploiting some people, without doing some stuff that is less than savory. And if the public perception says that less than savory stuff is unacceptable, I think many owners get skittish. So that's the case, is the owners are with each other and Silver works for the owners.
Yeah, and this is the one I wanted to get to next, which I agree with you is the most likely. That, yeah, they actually don't. So Sterling getting booted was a bad precedent if you're an owner, right? Because you could, like you said, you could be next. And if they're saying, well, we're going to boot Sarver too, slow down a second. Once we boot like the worst 3 or 4 owners, like where am I in this totem pole? You're right.
Well, it's a very
they're mostly
sitcom.
Probably covering stuff up, but just real fast, I think the boycott is one of the most important parts. Sterling was not out until the boycott hit, and the players were not going to get on the court, and that's the tipping point. So I would bet that Silver is kicking the can down the road with the 1-year suspension, and when he does face a boycott or some bigger resistance, he'll do more. But what he's really probably hoping for is Sarver will not just want to sit there stewing, facing criticism for a year, and will fold on his own.
Another frustrating, by the way, I was going to say the funny note about that is like a sitcom plot. I saw it on Parks and Rec, which is if you have like a group of 5 people and one is the punching bag, and then that person is removed from the group. This happened with Gary, his name's changed a bunch in the show, but Gary Gergic on Parks and Rec, like he quit, and then they were like, hey, by the way, he was the one we all made fun of. So now that he's gone, we're gonna start making fun of someone new, and Tom was that person. Don't be like that in real life, but it was a sitcom premise. And you're saying the same thing. It's like, as long as there is a worst owner that is in the league that you can all point to as the worst owner, you are safe. As soon as they are removed, you go down a rung. And very similar to a small office, there are only 30 NBA owners. So it's like 100% what you're saying. If public pressure can oust them, it can oust others.
The owners want it to be just that they are all powerful and are above whatever NBA laws they are, right? And that's the precedent they want to set.
And I mean, let's be fair. This is very United States, that we love rich people, right? Well, we don't. The United States systems are built up to hold up and maintain rich people. So easy example, right, is fines, a parking fine. Those are capped. So if you are a rich person that feels like getting parking tickets, that speeding, you can be a really reckless, horrible driver, and it means nothing to you, right? If it only costs you, if for you and me, if it costs a penny for us to illegally park our car, why would we never not illegally park our car? It's because it's actually punitive and hurts. Whereas as soon as you're worth hundreds of millions of dollars, what, a couple $100 parking fine, that doesn't mean anything. And there are stories that I believe Bill Gates is one that just has like street illegal cars, and he's like, I don't care, I'll pay. It's like you could fine me every day for the rest of my life, the maximum amount you are allowed to fine me for owning this car, and I will be dead and gone before even my grandkids even have to worry about the implications of that. You could fine out to my grandkids, and that would be fine. We could do that, by the way. We could tax our rich people more, but that's a topic for another day. And I was reading up on this. Sarver was fined $10 million, which is the maximum penalty allotted. Every single NBA owner, especially because of the value of the team, is worth over $1 billion. $10 million is nothing to any of these owners. So the system, as you're saying, like to kick the can down the road, the system is built up so that it's really, really hard to kick out owners. It's really, really hard to punish owners. The system is built up in the owner's favor. And the one thing we want to bring up that we always kind of do is like, if you were a fan, really ask yourself when you start finding yourself on the owner's side. Because like one thing I've noted is, for all this talk of the player empowerment movement, I will never, ever, 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 ever side against the players, ever, as long as the NBA draft is around. If you've got Kawhi and Kyrie and Ben Simmons all sitting out a year, and we actually talked on last 2 weeks ago show, Brian, which will probably still be every 2 weeks. Sounds good. We're keeping it up. I really love that. 2 weeks ago that we were talking about this and noted that all 3 of those players were probably legitimately injured and should have sat out. But if you're mad at them for sitting out to exercise their right in like negotiation and saying that's not fair, it's like, well, the NBA draft isn't fair. Every single one of those players got a hit in their value. Kawhi and Kevin Durant were both drafted not first, which means they were definitely paid lower than the free market would have demanded if they went out in the free market as a rookie. And Kyrie was placed in Cleveland, and bullshit anybody's telling me that when Kyrie was drafted, the number one destination is Cleveland after LeBron James has left and there's a big cratering hole and they're one of the worst teams in the league. So players don't have rights with how the current system is made. The system is built up to slap billionaire owners on the wrist if anything bad happens, and the owners don't want to see that change. So that's the current situation we're in. The potential hope is that there might be some, as you're saying, like political pressure, as in players getting upset, fans getting upset. Bigger one that's kind of funnier, this is very Game of Thronesy from Adam Silver's perspective, is he's going, if the other ownership groups in Phoenix start pushing on Sarver, that'll resolve itself and I don't have to get my hands dirty.
You watch the new Game of Thrones, Trey, at all?
I haven't
Not yet. I just started watching it. It's pretty fun. Yeah.
As mentioned, I'm still catching up on Sopranos. I mean, I'm
There
digging
we
it.
go. Pretty much the
My
same show, just a
um,
political show.
yeah, my favorite aspect. Someone brought this up. They're like, do you notice how everybody spent like the last 3 years saying nobody cares about Game of Thrones? Isn't it amazing after Game of Thrones went off the air, nobody cares, and we give a new Game of Thrones and everybody comes running. I mean, I think it's very Star Warsy. It's a fun universe. You know, if you put out half decent content, people will go there. We can all accept the last couple of seasons of Game of Thrones were hit and miss. I think what season 4 and season 7 are the bad ones. I'm trying to remember. 5 and 6 are really good, I think. Um,
Hmm.
but it was still an enjoyable show. And you and I have both had the same take that I've heard others come around to, which is season 7 was rushed, but the storyline behind season 7 was not a bad. It was poorly executed. It wasn't a bad.
You
It
could
wasn't
see
a
the
bad story.
potential, right? You could see the potential.
We talk wrestling all the time, and this, if you listen to a lot of old wrestling shoots, Mick Foley's got a new wrestling podcast out, which is a lot of fun to listen to, and he has these kind of things. It's like there will have been really, really good ideas for a storyline in wrestling, and the people at the top just changed their minds or rushed it and kind of ruined it. And that's kind of the Game of Thrones. It was bad booking. It wasn't a bad idea. So there you go.
There we go.
All right. Anything else to say? I mean, like I said, just the bummer news on Sarver is owners like owners. This is a slap on the wrist. It doesn't mean anything. I even said in the best case scenario, I got a little bit of love for this tweet. I noted Sarver is worth $800 million right now. The Suns, I believe, I'm estimating would probably be worth about $4 billion. And this was looking over the last couple, not looking over the Forbes valuation, just looking over the last couple of sales. It is wild, by the way, that the Clippers sold for $2 billion, which was like the highest mark ever at the time, and that's only gone down. It's billions and billions more. The Warriors selling for $450 million.
Yep.
That is one of the worst deals ever. Like the owner that sold them, and you even said that, right? Like he probably should have got a bargaining war, and like that's someone selling at the dip. The Warriors,
He didn't
and
accept the highest price, actually.
he didn't accept the highest price.
Yeah, he
and he
out
he
of
sold at
spite.
the worst
Yeah.
time to sell.
Yep.
And what's it called? I would argue the Hornets, right? The team that Jordan now owns. They sold horribly too. They both sold. Like both of those cases, it is remarkable to look at the NBA, which is supposed to be run by a lot of smart, business savvy people, and just how many stupid moves they make, short sighted ones, and a lot of these things. It's funny. It's like you can ask the fans, like Arturo was watching this, TV deals and stuff, and just know when the revenue for your team is going to be the highest. And so the number of people that sold 2 or 3 years before the revenue gave that, the revenue spike, which would have boosted the value of all the teams that everybody knew was coming, is remarkable. And I'll give another co-host of the show, Chris Ye, he kind of gave some insight as soon as you get some of these interesting ownership groups like the Lakers with the buses and a bunch of different people, as soon as you kind of have a group of people that are all squabbling over money, and instead of being able to tell that group, hey, listen, be patient, and if we make smart moves, our money value of this franchise will double or triple and we'll all be better off, you wind up with people that say, I just want my money now. I can cash out. And to be fair, I'll say this, like if someone ever came up to me and just said, hey, I'll give you 50 million, or you can, have a couple of bad years and I'll give you double that. First off, like you're allowed to invest the 50 million and potentially start making money right away. And other things, just get out of it. And by the way, last tangent, and then that was the capper on the Oakland Athletics. The Oakland Athletics, the famed Moneyball story team. The end of that story is the cash-strapped owners that were fighting an unfair system. They basically like tripled or quadrupled out their money at the end. They just said, running a baseball team is really stressful. You don't want to do that. They cashed out and just like did charity projects until they died. Yeah. All right, well, let's get on to more fun news. And by fun, I mean depressing. This is just a depressing show, Brian. I'm sorry. Glad we started out with some happy Warriors. Rob Williams III is out with injury. I think he's going to get arthroscopic knee surgery to, clear out his knee. And I was looking this up. He had a meniscus tear last season. And this is just a real bummer.
Yeah, well, so arthroscopic knee surgery is one of the least invasive techniques, and he's supposed to miss 4 to 6 weeks in theory. So, in theory, I'll say that twice in a row, he's going to be back and playing the regular season. But the thing you just said is what's disturbing, right? He has one injury, he's coming into another injury now, and it's like, is this going to be the end of it? And his athleticism is really important as the defensive center, right? He's one of the best defenders in the league. He gets out to the perimeter. He's very mobile and uses his foot speed greatly as a player. So I'm worried about his knee more than I would be with, say, Klay Thompson.
Well, and also it is funny, right? It's compound. One injury, you're like, maybe they'll come back. When it starts to be multiple, and an overarching theme that we've had on this show that I'm going to keep hammering is, watching out for your health in the playoffs. I made a tweet that was kind of mean today, where I said, the Celtics, I said NBA teams, but I was talking about the Celtics specifically in this case, but they're not alone. Warriors did this too. I said NBA teams during the playoffs, our doctors say you can't get injured anymore. And then being the classic millennial, making a Simpsons reference that no student in a current classroom would get, I had Dr. Nick show up. Hi, Dr. Nick. And I've made this point before about athletes, is like, you really, really have to watch out for your long-term health. And I know that's tough. But so in the playoffs, Durant, Rob Williams, these are players that rushed back into the finals to play. And in Durant and Clay's case, it was the worst of all worlds, right? They rushed back, got injured even worse, missed a whole season Clay Wright was maybe going to be back and then got injured in the preseason. You can question if that was related to his injuries in the finals. Kevin Durant just missed the whole season outright. Rob Williams III now matches Isaiah Thomas for the Celtics as players that rushed back in the playoffs. Of those four, Rob Williams is the only one that played well, right? Like the other three played like Durant and Clay got injured and left. Isaiah Thomas played below his normal levels, but Rob Williams played really well. We give a shout out to Ben Guest when we were predicting the NBA Finals. His take was Gary Payton III, or the second. Ooh, one will Gary. What will it be? Is there a way to do two different Gary Payton IIIs in that scenario, like Gary Payton II and Gary Payton Jr.? Because you could do Gary Payton III. I don't know if you can do anything else clever.
I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, that's a bummer. All right, but anyway, so Gary Payton II. Ben was like, Gary Payton's coming back. Otto Porter's coming back. They've had enough time and rest. I think they'll be fine. Rob Williams looked really, really banged up in the conference finals. This is going to be a rout. It'll be over in 5. It was over in 6, in part just because of some like insane heroics. I think Tatum had just like went off for an absurd game, one of those games.
Yep.
But he was right about Rob Williams III, but was just off by a little, right? Like Rob Williams III actually played the finals well, was tweeting out, hey, the doctors say I can't get injured any worse. And then boom, lo and behold, he's going to miss the preseason and probably at least a couple weeks in the regular season. And I've made this point about players like Joel Embiid. Even if you think he's fine, most players have a recovery period from injury. If you're injured and off the court, and you come back, you kind of have to get back up into fighting shape. That no matter how good you are at rehab, it is not the same as playing an NBA game. And so that's been kind of my point about Joel Embiid, about why he's not MVP. A lot of it has to do with his injury woes, is that he'll get to his peak, and his peak is MVP level. I'm not going to dispute that. But to call him anywhere close to the guy behind me, Nikola Jokic, is absurd, because what will happen is Joel Embiid will get to peak level, get injured, he'll come back, it'll take him a while to get back up to full strength. I think I compared it to like a race car spinning out and then having to accelerate again. And if you kind of just net the average speed, factoring for those slowdown and speed ups, it's just not, it's not the same as a player that plays 70 games, 30 minutes a game at a sustained level of greatness. So that's what I'm worried about Rob Williams III. He's going to miss a couple of weeks. It'll take him some time to get back. He's been injury prone in the past. And like, that's the thing, is you got an injury prone player, playing them through injury in a high intensity situation like the playoffs is risky. And I understand, by the way, I fully understand the incentive. I've kind of noted this before about teams like the Toronto Raptors that went all in on Kawhi. Your odds of winning a title are so low. So when you get a chance at getting the finals, going all in is the right maneuver. Anthony Davis remains the right move. I'm sorry, they got a title. They won. The Lakers can miss the playoffs for the next 10 seasons. They're not going to, by the way, but they can. And it will have been worth it. No amount of hate is ever going to take that away. I'm sorry. It's a bummer. The numbers all bear out that the Lakers won that trade because they cashed in all in now. They got a title now. They capitalized on a season of LeBron James. Boom. That is 100% worth it. Now, where I start to get icky, you and I are in this position a lot, Brian, because we're, cold calculating economists, is going, when I start doing those takes, it's worth going all in. And then I have to start saying it's at the cost of player health, is when I have to take a step back and go, I understand the Celtics saying, hey, Rob Williams, you can play, because they were one game away, right? Well, 2 games. They were one game away from a game 7. They were 2 games away from an NBA championship. And no Rob Williams, and they have zero chance at that. So I understand it, but it's just icky where my 2 cents often is to the players, like, protect your long-term health, because when it's over, it's over.
Yeah, just strategically speaking, it's just strictly a win for the team, right? If you think that player is going to leave in free agency, you can just run them into the ground. And yeah, that's fucked up. The players shouldn't fall for that. I mean, I don't know what to say, though, because if I'm Kevin Durant or Klay Thompson, maybe I come back and I don't get hurt and the Warriors actually win a title. Now, in hindsight, it was clearly the wrong choice. One of them missed 1 season, one of them missed 2 seasons. But yeah, it's the players. I think they get baited, especially Kevin Durant, by social media and stuff like that, and they get into that old school mindset where I've just got to roll the dice and hope my body holds up.
I mean, let's just be clear. That's also the mentality. You and I have clashed against the machismo culture of sports for a long time. I'm glad to see a lot of coaches we like. This is, Ben Guest. This is Travis Heath. This is Coach Nick of Beat Ball Breakdown, pushing back on the old mentality of, the yell at everybody coach and, you run laps if you mess up, and how that's just a really stupid model of coaching and doesn't work. But the culture of sports, right, is in some ways refreshing when you talk the United States and our individualist nature, right? When sports is like sacrifice for the greater good, sacrifice for the team. But, we just spent the entire first segment talking about what that actually means, right? It's a billionaire. The Suns had players like Charles Barkley and Chris Paul and some great names play really, really well for them. And at the end of the day, when they're done, like you were just saying this with Rob Williams, why you can play him to the ground, is Rob Williams is, I think, on a $50 million contract, like overall, which is a steal. If we take our cold calculating take of saying he's probably worth double to triple that, so maybe 100 to 150 million. Now, a couple of things, you're allowed to trade him. That's one. And two, the numbers basically say that the value a title adds to your franchise is so great.
Oh, yeah.
That if you're saying to yourself, okay, well, I got Rob Williams that's worth maybe $100 million. To me, and it's messed up to think about it this way, but by the way, tax-wise, that's what NBA teams do. They by U.S. tax law, you are allowed to depreciate the value of your assets on the team, including players, and that should make you feel icky.
We've got movie studios, Dre, shelving fully made movies and not airing them just to save tax money right now.
And well, yeah, so it's funny because that's like the movie is the asset there, and then it's easy to get super icky when you go the person is the asset, and they're called owners in a primarily African American league. I mean, come on, it's too on the nose. Like if I was writing this as a book, the person would come back and say, you don't have to keep slapping me in the face with the obvious metaphor you're doing, but is what it is. But basically, if you have an asset worth $100 million, but winning a title can add hundreds of millions of dollars to the value, it is easy for you to just say, go for it. And at the end of the day, the Kraft group is who's going to benefit from that, right? Rob Williams doesn't have stock in the company. Rob Williams isn't going to get to say, oh, I boosted the value of, the Celtics, I'm gonna get a payday from that. And so that's the problem, is that you have these players that are taught team above all else, which is great, but they don't get to enjoy any of the fruits of that, especially because teams are so ephemeral. You can get traded. When you retire, you're just off. Let's not forget the biggest name of them all, Michael Jordan, was a part owner of the Wizards, came back to play for the Wizards to help them out. And then when he came back to the Wizards after he retired a third time, when he came back after he retired a third time, they were like, nah, we're good. So it's like, it's really rough to tell players the attitudes that have gotten you to where you are now are not how you need to think long-term. For anybody, that is really rough. And by the way, as kind of a second derivative of that point, we're in the basketball analytics market. I don't know about you, Brian, but at least myself, I never really have any expectation or intent of making a living in anything sports related, be that working for a team, be that writing for a thing. And that's because I've recognized over time these places are very much a McDonald's mafia hierarchy where if you get to the top, if you get Sam Hinkie or Daryl Morey, you make money. But at all of these rungs of the ladder, it's a pyramid scheme, and all
You
these
mean the
other rungs.
franchising model of
The
McDonald's, the
fran-
restaurant?
yeah, this was in the first Freakonomics book where they basically noted that drug cartels and McDonald's, if you compared their corporate hierarchy structure, were
Oh,
identical. And
that's
the point
funny.
was, right, you've got all these low wage employees that aren't making a lot of money at the very bottom, the cashiers at McDonald's, the people on the street corners for cartels. And yeah, sure, once you get to a little bit above middle management, you're making decent money. Well, a lot of these people to work their way up the ladder, right, have to spend years getting underpaid. And I'm just going, that's not really worth my time. But so many people are so enamored with working for an NBA team or working in sports, they go far below their market value. So I'm talking about athletes at the grandest stage at being one of, what the NBA has been around less than 100 years, right? 75. They just celebrated their 75-year anniversary, where Dwight Howard was inexplicably left off the 75 list. And by the way, that makes me terrified that he is into some horrible stuff we're going to find out after he retires, because that is my only take. My only take is, we were just saying, Sarver is a well-known secret, right? It was known for years. Paul Shirley, former guest on the show, wrote an article for ESPN back in the day about like how horrible of an owner Sarver was when he was on the Suns, and this was 2006, I want to say. That's 16 years ago. It's been well known Sarver's horrible for years, right? That's why it was over a year investigation. You're telling me over that year, all these people didn't already know? It is a very insular community in sports. These people know each other. They talk. So it's well known that he's horrible. So that's my theory there, right? It's like, it's kind of weird that he was
You're
left
breaking
off.
my heart here. It's like, why does everyone hate Dwight Howard? They're so dumb. Maybe they're not dumb, and we just don't
Yeah.
know.
They don't want that.
Ah,
So there's an inverse, right? We've noted this before. Mariano Rivera is the first player inducted into Cooperstown unanimously. But the reason he was the first player inducted unanimously, similarly, the reason Steph Curry was the first unanimous MVP in the NBA, is the ballot stopped being anonymous. In both the NBA MVP and in Cooperstown, historically, the ballots were cast anonymously. So you were allowed to do smart, savvy maneuvers, right, to basically not waste your vote on a player you knew was going to get the vote, and try and give if you wanted your player to finish top 3 in MVP voting, you don't waste one of your votes on Michael Jordan.
ranked
Right?
choice voting. There we go.
Yep, there you go. But as soon as it wasn't anonymous, nobody wanted to be known as the person that didn't vote for Mariano Rivera or didn't vote for Steph Curry. Both did deserve unanimous, but I'm just saying that's why. And so I could see that with people having to vote on the NBA 75 going, I don't want my name anywhere near that. Like I could believe that, and I apologize. This is pure speculation. I have nothing to back it up. I am just saying what everybody was saying at the time is it is baffled. Like, there are lots of players. Dikembe Mutombo, Ben Wallace belonged on the NBA 75. I get why they didn't get it, but they belong there, right? That's 8 Defensive Player of the Year awards combined between those two players. They belonged in the NBA 75. You could argue they weren't complete. They didn't have an offensive game. Dwight Howard was a 2010 machine when he won 3 Defensive Player of the Years. He belonged on that list. Him not being there is odd enough that I'm just like, I'm really interested to see if anything else comes out in like 10 years after he retires.
I hope you're wrong.
I hope I'm wrong too. Anything else on the bummer of Rob Williams III, and take care of yourself?
No, it's just worth pointing out for non-Celtics fans. Celtics fans are saying, gee, thanks. But this is their second big injury of the offseason. Malcolm Brogdon, they signed as well. So,
Malcolm Brogdon's injured too, because I also know Danilo Gallinari got injured as well.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Jeez.
I mixed him up. It's Gallinari. Brogdon seems to be healthy now. He was hurt in the past. So, yeah, it's Gallinari and Williams. Thank you for setting me straight. But, yes, we'll see what happens. It's a long season, right? So these guys could all be back for the playoffs, and the team – well, I think Gallinari can't be maybe, but –
isn't he in Italy at this point, I believe?
Yeah, I think the point is they could be healthy in the playoffs, but as a team, or they could not be. It's just something to watch for.
Yeah. All right, let's get to our last subject, which has nothing to do with sports, but does have to do with the media and some of the stuff we've been talking about, which is chess. And I'm frustrated on a lot of fronts. So I'll try and do the here's the funny irony. It's a huge chess scandal. It's a huge chess story. If you really boil it down to its bare bones, best chess player in the world accuses. Sorry, I was trying to trick out Brad. Best chess player in the world accuses another good chess player in the world of cheating. That's the full story. But let's break down piece by piece. Magnus Carlsen is the top ranked player in the world, the former-ish. It hasn't been decided yet, but he has abdicated his world championship. So he is the former world champion, tied for 5 defenses of his world championship, which ties him with Garry Kasparov. Our greatest of all time, if we're looking using the ELO rating in chess, unlike other sports, because it is 100%. It's just a game, right? You don't have these weird variances, right? You don't have outside weather like you have in football and baseball. You don't have lots of teammates like you have in sports like basketball or hockey. Chess is chess is chess. There is a perfect rating system called the ELO system, which basically says if you have players that play enough professional games against other top calibers, you can calibrate all of them and ascertain how good they are to the point where you can really give good odds as to who would beat who, how much of the time. Using that rating, Magnus Carlsen has the highest rated ever at 2880 ELO. 2900 has never been broken, but that is the all-time. He is still ranked number 1 in the world using that ELO rating. He is the greatest player ever, and then even going for like individual accolades is probably up there. So one of the best players of all time. Has abdicated his world title because he doesn't want to play because it's a stupid system. And listen to the archives. We've talked a lot about why that's bad. You found a really good article I'm going to need to track down, Brian, because I really loved it. The author wrote it that talked the same thing, that it's a bad in modern sports. The classic chess system is terrible, and in a good way, this current story I'm talking about could signal that chess is entering the modern sports-ish area lexicon, which is good, but the story itself was kind of silly. Magnus Carlsen was playing a game at the Sinkfield Cup. This is the biggest tournament occurring in St. Louis. St. Louis, yeah, we've talked about this already, but basically St. Louis has the biggest chess community in the United States, backed by a billionaire that really likes chess. So some of the biggest names are there. Their chess club is the greatest. They have one of the most prestigious tournaments, the Sinkfield Cup, that goes on yearly. Magnus Carlsen was playing in that. He was upset by Hans Niemann, a top American. He's a 19-year-old American player that's really good. Crossed 2,700, which puts him in the upper echelon, top 50 in the world. The next round, Magnus Carlsen didn't show up for his game and withdrew from the tournament. And then he put a cryptic message on his Twitter, which says, if I say anything, I'll get in trouble, so I'm not going to say anything. Many speculated he was accusing Hans Niemann of cheating. He didn't say anything, but that fueled things to the point. This is what's going to get me annoyed, Brian. Someone on Reddit made a joke that basically said one way Hans Niemann could have been cheating was by having vibrating anal beads that were feeding him signals. It was pure speculation, pure made up, like same level as my Dwight Howard thing, right? Other than just saying, hey, this could have happened, no basis in fact or reality or any research. That got picked up by everybody. Daily Show, Colbert, I think even John Oliver. All of these people were talking about the story, saying top chess player accuses other chess player of cheating using anal beads, because it's a funny story. It's clickbait, and I hate that. I absolutely hate the modern media landscape, which, I mean, I guess all media forever has been get eyeballs, but I absolutely hate the make an inflammatory headline to get people to read your piece, even if that headline has very little to do with it. Because saying top chess professional accuses other top chess professional of cheating is very boring. But saying top chess professional accuses other chess professional of cheating using anal beads, ha ha ha, everybody laughs. So that's the first start. There's more to the story, but I'll see if you have anything to chime in there.
No, I just want to hear the second part, I guess.
Okay. So this gets all sorts of interesting for lots of reasons. Magnus Carlsen is part owner of a company called Chess24. Chess24 currently has an online tournament going on, and this is important because Hans Niemann has had issues cheating in the past online. At chess.com, which has moneyed tournaments called Title Tuesday, Hans Niemann has cheated in these events as recently as 2 years ago. So Hans Niemann does have a history of cheating. The defense many people have said is there is no proof of him cheating over the board, but there is proof of him cheating online, and he has admitted in interviews he's come out and said, yes, I cheated, but I'm past that. I'm better.
Is he 19 now? So he was 17 when he was cheating?
Somewhere in there, yeah.
Okay.
But I mean, that's for what it's worth. Magnus Carlsen was the youngest grandmaster at age 14 and was playing Gary Kasparov in ranked tournaments at age 13. So like all sports, they are basically professional for players in their teens. And chess being a very, let's say, academic sport, right, allows, like baseball, like hockey, will let teenagers make money playing them, whereas other sports in the United States that have a very obvious reason, like football and basketball, for some odd reason say, hey, you got to be 18 before you can make money, or you got to get through college before you can make money. You got to work for a bunch of rich old white guys for free for 3-4 years before we allow you to make money. Chess isn't like that. But so Hans Niemann was 17, a top player, was found out cheating online. He is currently in an online tournament run by a company Magnus Carlsen is a part owner of, that Magnus Carlsen is playing in. And everybody, is rubbing their hands together. What's going to happen when they play? They play. Magnus Carlsen, Hans Niemann makes a move. Magnus Carlsen makes a move. He was going into the King's Indian, which is my preferred defense against D4. And then after move 2, Magnus Carlsen resigned, shut off his web camera, and walked away and didn't say anything. For what it's worth, Magnus Carlsen has played the rest of the event thus far, is currently number 1 in the standings. There is a 15% chance he is going to be placed against Hans Niemann in the playoffs race. The way a lot of chess tournaments work, very similar to like a regular sports team, is you have like a regular season of the tournament where you play a bunch of the other players based on various things. Some of it's Swiss system where you keep playing better and better players until the end. Others just round robin. You just play all the competitors. So you've cross-section, you've played everybody at least once or twice, like round robin. And then based on your score at the end of that, you'll go into essentially a bracketed system like we're familiar seeing, where you play 1-on-1, best of 3, best of 5, best of 7. There's a chance Magnus might be ranked against Hans Niemann in the playoffs, essentially. And so we'll see what happens there. Now, again, he hasn't said anything, but it is very obvious that Magnus Carlsen is insinuating Hans Niemann cheated to beat him. Many people are responding at Magnus as just being a poor sport because here's what's really rough that a lot of people have said. It is really, really, really hard to detect cheating in chess. And one of the reasons is if you get to a player's level, these 2,700 level players that I'm talking about, I heard some top professionals like Dan Naroditsky and Hikaru Nakamura, 2 really popular streamers at this point, because that's the other funny thing. Chess is becoming really popular as an esport, and these are 2 big names in that field, have noted if you take a 2,700 player, really most games can come down to 2 or 3 moves. And so you don't need to cheat the whole game. Most of them have many openings, like the first 10, 15 moves of the game memorized. Many of them have like lightning fast recognition for tactics. So you don't need to give them the answer every move of the game, but there are a few cases where it is really, really hard. And giving them advanced knowledge in those situations could be huge. Now, I'll note a few things. This is nothing new to chess. Back in the day of Gary Kasparov, who I listed as one of the greatest chess players, and Anatoly Karpov, another one of the biggest names. They have one of the biggest rivalries of all time. I would rank that up.
This is the 80s, right? The late 80s.
This was 70s and 80s,
70s,
yeah.
okay.
I guess Kasparov, Karpov won in the 70s because Bobby Fischer abdicated his title as well. So what you got to do if you're the greatest of all time, you got to abdicate the title. Gary Kasparov did that as well, by the way. Gary Kasparov split with FIDE. So that's just something you do. If you're the greatest, if you're arguably the greatest chess player ever, you've got to break with FIDE and give up your world title.
This is almost like Michael Jordan leaves the NBA at his prime because the NBA is so incompetent, and then a few years later, LeBron James does the same thing and also leaves the NBA. Like, that's the kind of level FIDE's acting
if LeBron James quits to go play, remember that was a joke when it was like, where is he going? He was like, he was going to go play for the Browns. Yeah, if LeBron James quits for a year to play, had quit in the middle of his prime to play football. So it's happened multiple times. But Kasparov and Karpov, when they were playing, at one point in their match, Kasparov was arguing that Karpov's seconds, because you have teams of people that help you train and study, were cheating by the drink they were giving Karpov. So during the game, his assistants would bring a drink out for him to drink, and they were arguing. There are a few levels. This gets really funny. So one level is you could use it as a code, right? The drink you feed the person actually has information in some way. And this isn't hard to see, right? Let's say I give you let's say we have a bunch of different beverages like Coke, Pepsi, whatever. Each one could mean a different letter, right? And I could give you a different size. So I could literally be telling you a move with a drink. Alternatively, Kasparov said maybe even less insidious is if you studied the move and knew that it had to be a more aggressive move, you could give like a caffeinated drink, where if it was a more calming move, you could give something else. So the argument that players have been getting fed information in live over the board games to cheat is not anything new. And the argument that Nakamura and Naroditsky have made is like, you really only need this on 2 or 3. The other important aspect of this is these games were being live telecast. And this is very similar to poker, where there's an obvious thing. If I have a computer, like my cell phone is better at chess than the top chess player, I can go to the JavaScript engine at chess.com, and I am now the best chess player in the world. If I was allowed to use that, I could go into a chess tournament. It would be fast enough for me.
So it's obvious how you cheat when you're playing online. You just use a chess engine.
You just have a chess program open that you can use, and chess.com is able to detect if there are abnormalities.
But the over the table I want to hear more about, because it's a little abstract to me. So are you saying your coaches or teammates have information you don't have, so they pass it to you somehow? Because chess is a full information game, right? It's not like poker.
Well, so that's exactly. So that's the point. Is if I and this happens now because they're getting live telecasts. So if you go to chess.com while a major match is getting played, they can turn on an engine and it will tell you, very much like the sports, right? The football, the basketball win probability charts, except they're telling you the truth. They're saying a computer is looking at this right now, and it basically says that, black is 80-20, right, in terms of how good this game is going right now. Like, black should win at this moment. And if you were allowed to take that information and give it to one of the chess players, it would be really beneficial. And because the games are live streamed, now you get into that,
so the teammates are watching engines as their teammates playing over the board.
That's the theory.
Okay.
Well, let's set up the obvious way that cheating would be easy to do. Brian Foster, you're in a tournament. I'm your second. I am watching you play the tournament as it happens.
Right.
I have a chess engine analyzing the game. If I am able to pass information to you somehow from that chess engine,
not going to be anal beads, Dre. Sorry, it's got to be a different way.
Yeah, exactly. But that's the point. Is the whole reason the anal beads.
Drinks, actually, yeah. Give me some drinks. That'd be better.
Yeah, give a drink. But that's the point. And what actually happened after Magnus Carlsen withdrew is the Singfield Cup upped restrictions, right? Upped security measures, looking for things like cell phones, and they put the games on tape delay, and that's kind of key. Now, Here's a problem. Now, here's a funny thing in chess. Old school chess is hours. You're allowed to spend hours playing a game, like 2 hours to play, 2 hours per each person. So you could have a 4-hour game. You and I both actually watched in this last World Chess Championship. Jan Nepomniachtchi and Magnus Carlsen played the longest game in contemporary history.
This is basically why Magnus walked away, right? It's just a ridiculous format.
And he's argued, right? He's argued that exact point, that if you give the best chess players in the world lots and lots of time to think and play each other, that most of their games will be boring and draws. Whereas if you shorten the time limit, it will give much more exciting games, and you'll see much differing outcomes. Additionally, what you could argue is, because there is a problem with being able to pass information to people, a 15-minute time lag is still not enough to guarantee, because it would not be uncommon. It is not only would it not be uncommon, it is not uncommon to see top chess players spend 30 minutes on a critical move that an engine is just like, oh, this happened actually in the World Chess Championship between Fabiano Caruana and Magnus Carlsen. There was this critical move that Fabiano could have swung the outcome, but it was literally this really complicated, like 20 move combination of moving his knight around the board.
I remember that. Yeah,
he didn't see. I mean, and it's not nobody saw it. If this makes any sense, none of the top players commenting on it at the time saw it. And then when you turn on an engine, and you actually had to let the engine cook for a little bit. That's how hard of a move it was to find. Then they were able to see it. So that's the problem. Is it is not uncommon in these events. I'm actually going to end on kind of a happy note, which is to say, chess reaching this level shows that it is actually going mainstream, because I'm seeing the same types of revisionist narratives, right? Going, Magnus Carlsen is an affront to the game, and he is being horrible. And why it's so fun is, right, this is what I love. you'll have like LeBron James quit on his team. You would never see Michael Jordan quit on his team. And all you have to go is he literally quit on his team to play baseball. You just said that. When you see chess reach these mainstream headlines that are not related to the game, and you see people misremembering history, that is huge. The question is just making sure they can keep it and keep the integrity. But the last annoying point, this is from Dave Barry, chapter 1 of Wages of Wins, is sports fans don't care. We had Deflategate in football. We had the Houston Astros with garbage cans cheating. We had Tim Donaghy, a top-level ref, fixing games, and he even reffed some of the most questionable games in NBA history at that time. All of those things happened, and you go, oh my goodness, the sport will never recover from this black mark. And chapter 1 of Wages of Wins says sports fans like sports. So as long as you give them sports, they don't care. So I'm going to say this for chess. Chess is clearly at a point where it's got lots of eyeballs, lots of news. That is huge. It is just a matter of if they capitalize on it. And that is using faster formats and more online, which is what top players like Magnus Carlsen and Hikaru Nakamura are aiming for. So that one's like bittersweet. Like, the story is stupid. Here's all this stuff. But the net result is I'm arguing chess is in a good spot.
That's awesome. Can I ask a question about this? You may not know this. I'll put you on the spot, though. So I think chess, of course, we're comparing it to the NBA because we love the NBA, but it's sort of more like tennis. You're just a single person. You travel over the world, go to the tournaments you want, right? By the way, shout out to Serena Williams and Federer. Oh. Maybe the two best players of all time just retired, so...
Yeah, I mean, well, Nadal's got more. I mean, so here, sorry, I will jump in with that because this boggles my mind. So pre-Federer, you got Pete Sampras as the greatest all time, and man, all the feels in the world, he did not get to enjoy that. Right? Like,
he had that rivalry with Jim Courier and Andre Agassi, Dre. Anyway, keep going.
But
he was boring. I agree.
Oh, what? No, I did like. But that's the funny thing. You look at Pete Sampras when he retires, greatest all time. I think he had 15 Grand Slams.
Yeah.
And he had these major rivalries with Andre Agassi. And you look at both players, you're like, man, if Sampras wasn't there, Agassi probably has 16 Grand Slams and is the greatest of all time. You go, man, if Agassi wasn't there, Sampras probably has 20 Grand Slams, right? That's what you say. And Sampras retires greatest of all time. You got Federer and Nadal. And with them, you go, oh my goodness, if it weren't for Federer, if it weren't for Nadal and his stronghold on the French, or it weren't for Federer and his just crushing Wimbledon, each of these players might have 30 or 40 Grand Slams. So that's one of the remarkable ones where the greatest of all time was usurped by two, like Nadal and Federer, and then now Djokovic potentially, all leapfrogged him. They all have definitely leapfrogged him, and who ends up with the greatest all time is I stick with Nadal. He got the most Grand Slams. But it's just like, it's funny how quickly that evaporated. I'll put it that way. Anyway, but yeah, Federer and Serena Williams, and then you're comparing chess to tennis.
Yeah. So my question is, do you know the business arrangement that Magnus has with these tournaments when he goes there? Does he just show up as a competitor and play for a prize pool? Does he get an appearance fee like people do in tennis?
They definitely have sponsors, so that is the same. So, for instance, Hikaru Nakamura, he was back in the day was sponsored by, I believe, Red Bull, and then he actually was briefly on Steph Curry's esports team TSM, and he currently has his own spot. And that's why the world is shifting, because Hikaru Nakamura played in the Candidates, which is the big tournament to decide who gets to play in the World Chess Championship. And while he was doing it, he says, I'm a professional streamer. I play chess daily in front of a stream, because you can't do that, right? You're not allowed to bring camera. We're just talking about over the board cheating. There's no way they're going to let you bring in a bunch of camera rigs to play. And even online, you get into an interesting spot where Hikaru's argued for this, and it's not a bad thing, like having multiple cameras on you, having something that's monitoring your machine, that stuff's kind of needed. He was going, I'm losing money being here. By playing in one of the biggest live over-the-board tournaments, I am losing money from what I would be making streaming. And admittedly, he is one of the top 10 players in the world. He is currently the top blitz player in the world over the board. But he's saying, hey, I'm losing money doing it. And then there is a compatriot of his, Levy. I always get his last name. I believe it's Levy Rosman, but he's really good as well. Gotham Chess
at blitz.
Well, no, so he's just a streamer, and he's an international master. And actually, what's funny is International master, you could kind of consider like top, I would say maybe high school, right? If we're talking basketball comparisons. So an international master would be like a top high school recruit.
It's
A
a
GM would
level,
be
yeah, but behind GM, yeah.
college level, and then super GM would be NBA level.
Oh,
And so
interesting. So how many super GMs and GMs are there?
super. I was telling you, 2,700. There are under 50 in the world at a given time,
Oh, see,
and
the
that's like
2700 is a super GM. Okay.
yeah.
And then how far
So
down does GM go after 2700?
GM is 20. You have to be 20. So the way these work is you have to have your rating in a certain level. So super GM isn't an official title. GM is the last
Right,
official
exactly.
title. But GM is you have to have a rating of 2,500 FIDE, which is the highest international level, and you have to perform at that level in 3 tournaments with that level of competition. So essentially, not only do you have to be a 2,500 level player, you have to go play other 2,500 plus level people and beat a decent number of them you have to have a winning record in those tournaments 3 times to get the norms to be a grandmaster. But I guess what I'm going to say is Ian Gotham Chess is I got his name wrong, by the way. But anyway, I was just going to say Levy. There we go. Ian. I'm thinking Jan Nepomniachtchi, but he is an
Are you thinking of
international.
Ian Levy, the basketball writer?
Yeah, there see too many overlapping names. But what I was
Sorry,
going to
Jay.
say is
Sorry.
he is an international master, and I did get it right the first time. So Levy Rosman is correct, and I just lock it in. That's it. I'm going to say Gotham Chess for remainder. He, like I said, he's like a top high school level, and this is I didn't talk much about this with Hans, but one of the issues is it is likely he could have become a grandmaster had he worked harder at it younger. What kind of happens is there is an age curve in chess, and really, if you have not hit grandmaster level by the time you're say 20 at the latest, and that's super late, by the way. That's old school. I'm thinking old school days, but like modern days, if you're not a grandmaster by the time you're a teenager, you're never competing for a world chess championship. And Hans has seen a really rapid growth from age 17 to 19, which is really, really atypical. And Gotham Chess,
Oh.
he wanted to be a grandmaster, and basically you're too late. Like you needed to work super duper hard to become a grandmaster. He actually stepped away from the game after he became an IM. And then he came back. He's like, I'm going to try now. It's like, sorry, bud, you're too late. You're probably not going to be a grandmaster. A lot of grandmasters are saying highly unlikely, but he is probably the second highest paid streamer out there behind Hikaru. So Hikaru, top level player in the world, Gotham Chess, good high school player. They're both making probably more money as streamers than a majority of the top level chess talent out there. So like if you're looking at where you want to go as a chess professional, online streaming, esports, faster games is definitely where you want to go. And then I would argue this cheating thing brings it like to the forefront. It's going, you can have an online rapid or blitz event, and that's playing games with under an hour, under 15 minutes, whatever to each player. As soon as you give each player over an hour, the possibility of cheating just goes up dramatically.
Cheating is crazy in esports in general. Well, especially during the pandemic, right? A lot more online events versus live events. And a lot of the big esports games, especially shooters like Call of Duty and Overwatch, where you can get the craziest cheats ever, like the aimbots that will snipe people for you. All those games are starting to adopt kernel level anti-cheat information. That's how that's how deep like these invasions go for the cheats. It's really interesting.
Or something like each person that plays needs to play on a specific box that like, and I mean that makes sense, right? If you get to the top level, you could do that. You could basically say, we have these machines we have made, we're fully monitoring, this is stuff's on it, you use it only for this. You even hit the point where you could still do similar sporting event things where people play remotely, but they play in front of an audience. I think there's a great future there for that. It will be interesting with cheating, but let's just be clear on all sports. So cheating forms, things like doping, things like baseball is the best, right? For doctoring the balls, doctoring the bats, stealing signals. Cheating is rampant in sports, and you just have to keep the sport at just enough of a level, and fans are okay. And I would say chess is in that state. And then, like I said, just chess is also in the same media state that I hate, that we lament every couple of shows, of just inflammatory stuff that isn't true being able to get headline getting, and then it just gets picked up and repeated, and you trace it back and it's one source and it's not even a good source.
It's worth pointing out, Hikaru, again, you just said he's the most popular streamer, right? He was the one who accused Hans of cheating first before anyone else, right? Or that he thought Magnus thought he was cheating. The point is, Hikaru knew that that was the angle that everyone was going to talk about, and he's the top streamer.
Yeah, I mean, that's really hard. And I mean, there's also a lot of dirty laundry stuff, right? Which is Hikaru makes his bread and butter on chess.com. Hans Niemann cheated on chess.com. There's
Yeah.
stuff Hikaru knows.
We talked about
You
this
get
last time.
you get into all sorts of stuff, so that gets all sorts of play. All right,
Yep.
Brian. Well, you gave me a nice post-birthday gift. We talked about a pre-birthday gift I got on last week's show. I got a post-birthday gift for this one. Anything else you want to end up on? Otherwise, I do have a shout-out, and then we can
No, I'm ready for
2 weeks to
shout-outs.
talk real NBA. All right, I'm going to shout out myself and Jeff May. So Jeff May is someone I'm a huge fan of. He's a podcaster. He's got a Patreon network, and basically he lets people co-host if they're willing to pay for it, which I did. And so we have a podcast up on the Legend of Zelda 2, or Zelda 2, sorry. That's the only game we talk about on the show. Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link. And so that is up. It's pinned on my profile. You can go to patreon.com/Jeff May, but you should really look at mine for the actual link to that. So I had a ton of fun. And we are going to be doing another one on Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, which I'm going to have to find a way to beat. I'm so close, Brian. You and I have talked it. I'm looking forward to that. And then, of course, I'll give another shout-out to my friend Rixter GT. So on this channel, you and I I'm happy, Brian. We've got a schedule. I'm going to I'm going to try and add the trifecta, which is I've got regular podcasting, regular streaming. If I get regular writing, then I can use the writing to promote the streaming and podcasting, and then we're a well-oiled machine going into the NBA season. That would be really fantastic this year after the last 2 years of the pandemic and everything else. But Rixter GT on Tuesdays, so either I'm recording a show with you or I'm streaming with him. We have been streaming the Mega Man game. So next Tuesday on twitch.tv/Rixter GT, I will be streaming Mega Man 4 versus Rixter GT. So those are my shout-outs. To myself, how vain is that?
No, shout out to you
level.
for taking on Mike Tyson. I could never beat Tyson when I was a kid. So when I came back as an adult and beat him legitimately, I'll shout myself out for beating Tyson. Go do it, Dre. It's worth it. Everyone needs to beat Tyson.
So you just have to get to the second round, and
you have to learn the first minute and 30 seconds.
Here's what's funny. I'm still horrible at it, but I fall down. You can fall down 2 times in that first minute and 30. And I just need to be able to put them away in the second round, which I'm super duper close to. I'm actually kind of embarrassed and annoyed that I haven't done it, but hopefully I get it done in a week. All right. Well,
I got one more shout out. We talked about briefly. WNBA had a great season and just ended. That's how you know the NBA is here, right? WNBA finals, Las Vegas Aces, Becky Hammon, who we thought should have gotten a chance in the NBA, instead went and became the highest paid WNBA coach, and she won a title in her first year. But of course, it's all about the players. And man, who are we talking? Asia Wilson was regular season MVP, and I forgot who the finals was already. Here we go, Chelsea.
So this is embarrassing. I just did a search. Oh, this is Bing. That's my problem. Bing tells me that Kalia Cooper is the finals MVP. You will recognize her as the finals MVP from last year. So fantastic work on search engine optimization. Chelsea Gray's final MVP is remarkable because she was not an all-star this season, and she shot over 50% from 3. She doubled the number of 3s she was taking per game.
She took a ton of shots.
It's amazing. I mean, like, that's just like Super Saiyan mode. I was kind of shocked at that.
Sorry for getting your name, Chelsea Gray. I did watch you.
Okay. And then AJ, I think it's probably like Ajay. I think that's how you say it.
Oh,
Apologies, I'm getting it wrong. Wilson got the MVP and Defensive Player of the Year, is the 5th WNBA player to do that, to get both, and the 2nd WNBA player to do it in a season. And then I've got one last piece of WNBA trivia from Dave Barry, which is the Sun, and I don't know what this means, brother. There's conspiracy theories here. The Sun actually outscored the Aces by 5 points in the finals.
Right.
So they won on points but lost on games. Now, funny fact, Charles Barkley's Suns in the NBA in 1992 lost in 6 but outscored Michael Jordan's Bulls. Now, the Sun are in Connecticut. The Suns are in Phoenix. We just talked about them, obviously. But the Sun and Suns have now both been to an NBA Finals where they have lost and outscored their opponent. I don't know what it means, Brian, but, if you're looking for weird dots on your what's the Always Sunny meme person?
Yeah,
if you're looking for
yeah,
more,
Charlie Day on the murder board. Yeah, yeah. I
if
don't
you're
know the
looking
name of that movie.
for more threads to put on your Charlie Day board, there you go.
Shout out to Sue Bird also, who also retired. So many great
Yeah.
athletes retiring right now. Over 20 years. The Storm played some pretty epic games in the playoffs, especially in the semifinals. Anyway, it was a good WNBA playoffs. Wish I'd watched more.
Absolutely. I mean, it's one of those. I was talking about this. I'm not even paying attention to the NBA offseason, but we'll get back into the swing of things. And thank you, W. And they had really good numbers. They're doing really well. I'm hopefully very like chess and WNBA are two things I'm like, if these are handled right, they are set to take off. So please, 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 people in charge of both of these, handle them right, because I'm sick of how the NBA is run. That's what I watch. Anyway, all right. If you found us not through a website, you can find us at boxscoregeeks.com. We go live every other Tuesday, Brian. We're keeping it a pattern. Usually around 9, pre-show is usually 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, twitch.tv/nerd numbers. You can find the recap shows on YouTube channel Nerd Numbers, and of course, find us wherever podcasts are found, the Box Score Geek Show. Co-host, compatriot, Box Score Brian on Twitter, Brian Foster, and then myself, Nerd Numbers on Twitter. Have a week, and go NBA.